completed our budget conference committee process. We will be going to the floor shortly with the legislative budget. And that conference report is not before the budget committee today. It goes directly to the floor. But we do have 4 items in front of us, and that would be 4 trailer bills: AB 95, AB 114, AB 116, and AB 119. We're going to start as a subcommittee till we get our quorum established. Ms. Bosler, welcome back to our budget committee. Thank you for working with us so seamlessly through our conference process. And before we get started, I just want to say thank you to the Vice Chair of the Budget Committee, Senator Nielsen, who joined Senator Lara and me in our Budget Conference Committee deliberations with the Assembly counterparts. And having served on now 9 conference committees, I don't remember one that moved so smoothly, had such respectful give and take, certainly differences of opinion, sometimes between parties, sometimes not. There were many points of common interest and agreement, as the votes reflect, and the same between the Senate and the Assembly. And working with you, Ms. Bosler, you were always clear when some action we took was different from the direction that the administration was taking, but to work with us on any number of compromises. And so the conference committee that will be on the floor today, in terms of differences in spending of general fund dollars, represents about 0.8% of the total general fund budget, meaning we are 99.2% in agreement. That's quite amazing. But that's where all the drama and interest is, in that 0.8%. So again, Senator Nielsen, it's been a real pleasure, and thank you for all your efforts, and to our budget subcommittee chairs, again, for all of your many endless hours through the winter and spring months that bring us to this day. Okay, so AB 95, our transportation trailer bill.
Yes, these 4 trailer bills that are before you are all things that the administration supports and do help to implement the overall budget for 2015-16, and also the supplemental appropriation bill for 2014-15. This transportation bill, I'll just run through a few of the highlights. One of them is increasing the cap on the green sticker clean air vehicle program from 70,000 to 85,000 stickers, allowing additional low emission and energy efficient vehicles with single occupant to use the high occupancy lanes. Also, there's an extension of 1 more year for increased flexibility for local transit agencies in how they spend their state transit assistance. And then also there is additional reporting requirements related for Caltrans related to fish passage barriers. Those are the 3 of the important components of this bill. There are a few others. Most of these changes are technical and do help to implement the 2015-16 budget.
Thank you, Ms. Bosler. Any questions from the committee? With regard to our green sticker clean air vehicle program, do we know how many have been issued at this point? I think we're north of 70,000 now.
Mark Renaud, Department of Finance. The current law provides for 70,000, and so my understanding is that we haven't superseded that.
We cannot do that.
But I understood it was more than 60,000.
Okay.
And expected to continue to increase.
All right. I know this is an issue that Senator Pavley has been leading for many years.
People wildly waiting. I think that's the reason it's in part of the budget. It was a bill in that we've used up all those, and people are buying. It's for the plug-in hybrids, that transitional car to the full electric.
And of course, the delicate balance we try to reach here is to continue to encourage Californians to make the purchases of these low emission and energy efficient vehicles, at the same time to set some limits so that the benefit of the lanes do not become too diluted. Senator Nielsen, did you have a comment?
Ms. Bosler, could you comment about the high-speed rail reporting requirements to align with the release every other year? There's something that bothers me about that we might miss something if we do this every other year instead of taking a look every year. Could we give some justification for that approach?
You know, I think when all of this was originally put together, it was a new project, and there was a hypersensitivity over any, big changes year over year. But with time, I think the project it's got a footing now, and they're progressing. And the idea was that, well, let's try to streamline the reporting requirements so that they don't spend all their time reporting, and that they're able to focus more on the project.
Well, one of the concerns I have, the unknowns, the vicissitudes that there's litigation that's coming down. There could be overruns, or there are on many other projects. We don't ever seem to have projects that don't incur overruns. There's a political dynamic related to the high-speed rail. A lot of folks where it's going to be first put don't want it. And we've got some litigation that's been successful so far on their behalf. So that's what kind of bothers me about not having a closer look at it every year. That should be enough statement now.
Okay. Very good. Yes, Senator Morlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, back to the stickers for carpool lanes where it does have an impact in Orange County. Do we know the distribution of who's getting these stickers? Are they $100,000 cars, or are they Chevy Bolts? Do we know if we're helping working families, or are we just helping people that can afford a nice car?
Yeah, we don't have the breakout of the value of each of those cars. So, I think the understanding is they're between $10,000 and $20,000, which is kind of the normal price for the lower end of these. But we can see if DMV has that information.
That'd be helpful. If you can provide that, I'd like to see it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. That would be good information to have. We're going to establish our quorum. Please call the roll.
Leno?
Here.
Nielsen?
Here.
Allen? Here. Anderson? Bell? Block? Hancock? Mitchell? Here. Monning? Here. Morlock?
Here.
Wynn? Here. Pan? Here. Habley? Here. Roth? Here. Stone? Here. Wolk? Here. We have a quorum.
We have our quorum. So if there are no other questions for Ms. Bosler or comments from the committee on AB 95, we have a motion from Senator Roth. If you could call the roll, please.
Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Nielsen?
Abstaining.
Allen? Aye. Allen, aye. Anderson? Bell? Block? Hancock? Mitchell? Aye. Mitchell, aye. Monning? Aye. Monning, aye. Morlock?
No.
Morlock, no. Wynn? Pan? Aye. Pan, aye. Havley? Aye. Havley, aye. Roth? Aye. Roth, aye. Stone?
No.
Stone, no. Wolk? Wolk, aye. That's 8-3. 8-2, I'm sorry.
8-2, and I know we're still missing some members, so we'll put that on call. Our next bill is AB 114, which is our Public Works trailer bill.
Yes, AB 114 that's before you is a Public Works trailer bill. It's a standalone trailer bill. Many of the issues are related to the State Public Works Board requirements and procedures. This includes the elimination of the sunset date on the board's asset transfer authority and replaces that sunset with additional legislative reporting. It also shifts jail construction funding between 3 of the board's financing programs to better utilize those monies that could not be used in the first round for the county jails. So these issues, most of the provisions in this are really technical, with the exception of the elimination of the sunset date. And I'll just say a little bit on public asset transfer. This does allow the state to have more flexibility in financing the design and construction of projects, and I think it's a useful tool for the Public Works Board to continue to have.
Thank you, Ms. Bosler. So as you mentioned, this removes the sunset date. How long have we had a sunset date? Has it been extended a number of times and we're sunsetting it now, or is it just one time we had it?
Greg Rogers, Department of Finance. It was when the legislation was originally provided to the Public Works Board, it was about 5 years ago. So it was a 5-year sunset.
Right. And the sunset served its purpose, and the proposal is now to eliminate it.
That's correct. And then we'd have a report, I think, due in 2017 to
Right.
kind of provide more information to the legislature when it is used.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? So again, mostly technical in nature, with the exception of the removal of the sunset that allows for the SPWB, the State Public Works Board, to enter into an asset transfer and lease for purposes of securing the payment of debt service. We have a motion by Senator Roth. Call the roll, please.
Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Nielsen?
Aye.
Nielsen, aye. Allen? Allen, aye. Anderson? Bell? Bell, aye. Block? Hancock? Mitchell? Mitchell, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Morlock? Morlock, aye. Wynn? Wynn, aye. Pan? Pan, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Roth? Roth, aye. Stone? Stone, aye. Woke? Woke, aye. That's 13-0.
13-0. We'll keep that on call as well. Thank you. And I am still operating in conference committee mode. I apologize for lack of opportunity for public comment. We will certainly have them for the remaining two bills. And if anyone does want to say something with regard to AB 95 or AB 114, you are certainly welcome to do so at that time. So my apologies. We'll move on to the third trailer bill, AB 116, which is our supplemental appropriations bill.
Yes, this bill is associated with additional expenditures that are needed for the 2014-15 fiscal year. The total supplemental appropriation bill is $521,500,000 from the general fund, and then $96 million from various special funds. The primary drivers of the supplemental appropriation bill are the state's, two of the state's entitlement systems, the Medi-Cal program and the administered by the Department of Healthcare Services, as well as services for the developmentally disabled consumers that are administered at the local regional center level. There's also additional monies for some increased costs that were driven by the state receiver over the state's correctional system. Also, there is a small amount for two counties related to homicide trial costs with the existing reimbursement system that the state has for those extraordinary costs. And there's also $96 million from the Universal Lifeline Telephone Service Trust Fund for increased costs associated with a new-ish Public Utilities Commission program related to extending wireless communications under the Universal Lifeline program.
Thank you, Ms. Bosler. This $521 million shortfall, how does that compare to recent years? I know it's usually in the hundreds of millions of dollars. We sometimes higher or usually lower? And I know many of these expenses are beyond our control.
Yes, this is something that has, the LAO, we all are working at looking at the best way to forecast these costs. There has been a lot of variety over the years about which departments have driven these costs. I think it's really quite extraordinary, given all of the changes in the Medi-Cal system over the last several years, that we were only off about $241 million. This is a $80 billion, a very large, $20 billion general fund, $100 billion total funds for the Medi-Cal system. So this is quite a small percentage of those overall costs. The DDS one is a little higher than we've seen in recent years, but there's also a lot of changes that are impacting the DDS world as well, with the shift of services for applied behavioral services and autism to the health insurance arena. There were some assumptions made in the previous budgets about how that shift was going to occur, because some of these consumers were being served by regional centers but will now be served through their health insurance. Some of those assumptions are still are not coming to bear, and so that's why there's one of the reasons why there's some difference in about what we assumed versus what actually happened in the current year.
And again, in the scheme of things, $521 million, a large sum, of course, but in the context of a $115 billion general fund budget, less than 0.5 of a percentage point. So our estimates have been relatively accurate. And then, of course, the source of these funds would come from our regular reserve, not from our BSA, but from our regular reserve. So what would be the balance of that as we close out the 14-15 year with this $521 million hit to it? Probably just a little under $500 million.
Yeah, a little under $1 billion.
Oh, it's as high as that.
Well, I don't have the final numbers, so I didn't bring those with me.
The reason I ask is I
they're still
thought
being
we were at about
discussed.
$1 billion, and if we're going to subtract 500, that might leave us with about $500 million in that regular reserve. Again, different from our budget stabilization.
Yeah, at the May revision, we were at 1.4 billion.
Okay,
So
there you go. So just under $1 billion. Very good. Any other questions? Yes, Senator Nielsen. and then
Chairman,
Senator
just a caution here, and it's endemic again in our budget over the years, the continued deficiency bills that come through, and these deficiencies in Medi-Cal are just under $2 billion again. And it's sort of disappointing that we can never get it right. I've argued over the years that departments of state government purposefully come in with deficiencies, and it's become a habit. So I just wax caution on continued deficiencies.
Thank you. To shine a brighter light on it, I think we're both pleased to see today, Senator Nielsen, that though we do have a deficiency from the receiver, there is not a request from the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation.
Yeah, there is not, but the Department of Corrections budget has gone up, notwithstanding they're dealing with a lot fewer inmates, and that's a whole other discussion we'll not waste our time on, but they haven't been able to give me any explanation of why, other than blame it on the receiver, which I don't accept entirely.
But the point was there's no supplemental appropriation request. So, glass is half full. Senator Morlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since this has been happening with Medi-Cal for a number of years now, are we planning to have a better estimate this year on what we're planning to spend, or are we historically always providing a low number and then approving it later this way?
Speaking from the Department of Finance, getting the estimate as close to right is a very big part of our job, and so that's something that we focus on. There was an incredible amount of change that the Medi-Cal program went under over the last several years, and we continue to adjust and make sure that we're capturing all of the behavioral changes and other changes related to costs that are happening. So this is definitely a work in progress. I think the $241 million is actually relatively small when you look at the overall base of the entire Medi-Cal program. It's something we do continue to refine. And we definitely want to get these estimates as close to correct in the budget ahead of the year starting, so we don't have to come forward with these deficiencies. Sometimes that doesn't happen for things that are unforeseen to us when we put those estimates together.
Well, two thoughts. The first is that we're relying on forecasts, so I understand that game. But if we're going to underestimate expenses and overestimate revenues, then that creates a real awkward situation if both come to fruition. So since I'm new here, at the county level, our auditor controller would always say, hey, you've already spent everything and we can't spend any more. But here we just keep spending and then we just bring it up in this format and approve overspending this way? Is this the protocol?
Well, there's a detailed reporting system that happens. So throughout this 14-15 fiscal year, the Joint Legislative Budget Committee has received letters from the Department of Finance, first notifying when we find out about the possibility that they'll be spending above the budgeted level, and then a lot of evaluation that goes on back and forth between our department and the affected department, in this case, Department of Healthcare Services, about why that is and what the actual trends are in terms of the expenditures. And then a final disposition or letter is sent to the Joint Legislative Budget Committee with an approved expected amount that we need, that additional monies that are needed for the current year. So this is something that's been monitored very closely, really from the day after the budget is signed. I think it's just a reality that not every assumption is exactly right, and definitely do hear about not wanting to estimate caseloads and overestimate revenues, and I think those are things that we're very sensitive to, because if they're both going in the opposite direction, the state could quickly be in a deficit. So that's something we're working very hard to make sure we get as close to right as possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, just add a point.
Just one second. Thank you, Senator Morlock. I think all of us are very eager to get these numbers as accurate as possible. But just for the general public who may be paying attention to this, and with full respect for your comments, it is important to put this into some context. This is a $100 billion program with the federal match. The administration, working with the LAO, is 99.8% accurate. They were about 0.2% off. I don't know anywhere else in life where that isn't a very high success score. 99.8. So we want to get even closer and even better, but I think this is rather remarkable, especially given the expansion of the Medi-Cal program as a result of the Affordable Care Act and the millions of Californians that are now participating. A third of the entire state, I think 1 out of every 2 children. So this is quite astounding that we're as close as we are. Senator Nielsen, then Senator Stone.
I just want to kind of make a point of something historic, but it's something we need to continue to be wary of. This was about 3 years ago, and we made a bit of a fuss about these deficiencies. And 2 departments, 2 very large departments, one being corrections, decided that they were going to take $300 million that the legislature previous that year had allotted in the budget for specific purposes within their agencies, and redirected the spending to pay for accrued overtime and annual leave expenditures. And to avoid going to the legislature, they went directly to the claims board of 5 people to approve that. I take offense at that, and those are things we need to continue to watch out for in government. It can happen in any of these areas.
Senator Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to get back to Medi-Cal, and I appreciate your comments, sir, that when you look at the entire budget and these deficiencies, they, as a percentage, are small, but as a magnitude of dollars, are very large. And so looking over the past 3 years, $553 million 3 years ago, $483 million last year, $760 million this year. What has been the common denominator for it, or is there a common denominator that is justifying these increased numbers that we may better prepare ourselves for? And then have we fully taken into consideration the growing population that we anticipate in this new fiscal year? There's a bill that may become law that allows undocumented children now to be part of the Medi-Cal system, which is going to be a significant cost. Certainly, I've been advocating a higher Medi-Cal fee. I know that there is a proposal within the budget for a modest increase in the fee, which I hope comes to fruition as we have more people going on Medi-Cal, and we have a very limited network of physicians that will take it. Then, of course, next year, I think we start ponying up, if you will, for the Affordable Health Care Act, which is going to have its impacts also on Medi-Cal. I would rather overestimate than underestimate and maybe break this trend of having to come back with these deficiencies?
So the deficiencies that the Department of Healthcare Services specifically has had over the last few years have been really directly tied to the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. This is a new population. There was, at the time, the best estimates were made, but really the overall response to the implementation of that was not known at the time those estimates were made, and major revisions were needed after the initial information was received about what the enrollment was looking like. So that was some of what I was talking about in terms of the uncertainty related to when you make a big change to a program, in this case, an expansion of the mandatory program under the Affordable Care Act. The optional is still 100% federal funds, the optional expansion, but that's the one that will be over the next few years. There will be an increased general fund share for that program. But just the mandatory expansion brought in many, many more Californians than were previously anticipated. And so that was really what drove those shortfalls in the last 2 years. This number is quite a bit smaller than those. I think we're getting to a more steady state and really understanding the overall impacts of the expansion that the Affordable Care Act did. And it really was more than just a population. It was a lot of different rules related to how people are enrolled and how long they stay on the program. There were many, many different changes that were encompassed in the Affordable Care Act, not just the expansion of the population. So all of those changes and the impacts on the costs in the program and on the population covered in the program are things that we're starting to get a much better handle on, which is why the number is significantly lower than in years past.
Has the federal government been an honest arbiter, if you will, on the Affordable Health Care Act with regard to paying 100% of their responsibility as was proposed in the law? Have we been receiving our fair share?
Adam Dorsey, Department of Finance. Yes, the federal government has provided 100% of the cost for all of the people that we consider the optional expansion, which are the childless adults in the program. So that population does continue to be paid with 100% federal funds and will until 2017, when the state will have a 5% share.
5%.
In 2017, transitioning to 10% over the next 5 years.
So what is the 100% share that the federal government's paying today? How much is it, 100 plus billion?
I don't have that right in front of me, but you're right, it's in the billions.
Okay,
Yes.
so our share, you know, in counties and cities, we used to project out 5 years so we didn't find ourselves in trouble. So when it kicks in that the state's going to have to pay for their share, if it's 5 points, we're looking at probably $5 billion. How are we preparing for that? Or are we preparing for that? Because I think the LAL predicted in 18-19 that we're going to have a $2.5 billion shortfall. Are we?
That's actually our estimate.
Your estimate? Okay.
Yeah, those are the administration's estimates. And that additional, at full implementation at the 10%, we estimate that there'll be an additional $1 billion in general fund costs associated with the optional expansion. And those numbers are built in to our out-year estimates and are reflected in that $2.5 billion shortfall in 2018-19.
So the administration can say that they've mitigated that shortfall for 18-19 through
We have planned for it by building it into the out-year estimates of what the program will cost. So we're planning for it.
But we really haven't tied down the revenue source for that.
I mean, that's really the crux of the continued conversations about a final budget deal, is that when you look a few years out into 2018-19, recognizing that there are many different variables and uncertainties, but our current estimates are that there's a $2.5 billion operating shortfall, and so there would have to be actions taken to mitigate that by the time we got there.
Is that assuming the population stays static, or is that assuming the trend of population?
Our entitlement programs do have a general growth factors related to population population and the estimates for the program growth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. So we would like to ask anyone from the public who would like to speak on this trailer bill. We have a motion by Senator Roth, no public comment. We'll call the roll.
The motion is due pass. Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Nielsen?
Aye.
Nielsen, aye?
I didn't know, sorry.
I don't know. Allen? Allen, aye. Anderson? Bell?
Aye.
Bell, aye. Block? Block, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Mitchell? Mitchell, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Morlock? Morlock, no. Wynn?
No.
Wynn, no. Pan? Pan, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Roth? Roth, aye. Stone?
No.
Stone, no. Wolk? Wolk, aye. That's 11-5. 4. 11-4.
11-4, that bill is out. Sandy, if you could please lift the calls on items 1 and 2, please. Call the absent members on item 1, which is AB 95.
AB 95, the motion was due pass. Anderson? Bell?
Aye.
Bell, aye. Block? Block, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. That's 11-2.
11-2, that bill is out. And our second item, which is AB 114.
The motion was due pass. Anderson? Block? Block, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. That's 15-0.
All right, 15-0, that bill is out. Moving on to our last trailer bill, which is AB 119.
Yes, this is a proposal that was included in the governor's January budget. This bill would authorize a quality assurance fee on freestanding skilled nursing facilities in order to bring additional federal funds into the state for an enhanced reimbursement rate for these facilities. The bill does provide for an annual rate increase of 3.62% for 5 years, beginning this August.
Ms. Bosler, if you could please, for the sake of the committee, remind us how the quality assurance fee works. I think it was established in 2008 that it's the sunset's been extended 5 times. The last time, and I think it is a 2/3 majority vote bill on the floor, in 2012-13, we certainly did pass it, and how it accesses additional general funds, and just how the whole mechanism works for the committee's sake, please.
Adam Dorsey explained the concept.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Dorsey.
Yes. So the way that it works is that under healthcare-related taxes, the department can assess a tax of up to 6% on certain provider types. And so a tax is assessed to these plans.
And is it a tax or a fee?
It is a tax.
Okay.
Yeah. So the tax is assessed on these providers, and the providers pay the tax, and then they're paid a supplemental payment. The supplemental payment is matched with federal funds. So there's a portion of the tax that is used for general fund offset, and then there's a portion of the tax that's used for supplemental payments to these providers. So it's sort of a win-win situation for both the providers that participate as well as for the state.
And as the name of it would indicate, this is an incentive for increased quality of provision of care for those who are a part of these facilities.
That's exactly right. So we have $90 million that is set aside for quality-based payments to these providers.
All right, thank you. Questions from the committee? Public comment, please step forward.
Brief public comment, Jennifer Snyder on behalf of the California Association of Health Facilities, only to say that we support the governor's proposal. It is industry supported, has been since 2004. It generates $500 million out of our facilities, which is federally matched, which now will be, reinvested back into facilities through the Medi-Cal rate and through the increase that the governor's agreed to. So a very important industry supported initiative, and it has provided, we believe, good enhancements to quality and staffing in those facilities. But again, this proposal is necessary for us to continue to be able to do that. So just wanted to express our support from the facilities perspective. Thank you.
That's important, thank you.
Gary Passmore with the Congress of California Seniors. I guess I'll express the support from the consumer's perspective. We supported AB 1629, Assemblymember Frommer's bill in 2004. We've continued to support the QAF and the provider fee, and we support not only the extension of it, but also the rate increase, which we expressed in.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Passmore. We do have a motion by Senator Roth. Senator Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is always an interesting dilemma when you have the industry that is wanting to tax themselves, and I certainly understand the motivation. We're going to get federal funding that otherwise wouldn't come. Having not been here since 2008, I just want to make sure that we're not picking winners and losers. Is it fair to say that every home that is being taxed is ultimately going to be the beneficiary of more money? In other words, you're giving with one hand and you're getting back more with the other hand.
So yes, that is true. There are winners and losers. So not every facility makes out in terms of in a net gain situation, and that's under federal law. You can't have a situation where everyone is made whole for the exact amount that they put in. In addition, not everyone gets the same amount of quality payments, and so the quality payment portion is based on quality measures, and so that's another area in which one facility might get a different type of payment than another.
Just as an example, I took a tour of my district, Mr. Chairman, this last weekend, and I went into a facility where all the patients needed 24-hour care. They were all on respirators. They all were victims of some form of muscular dystrophy. I have to tell you, it was one of the most fulfilling visits I've ever had, and that these kids and young adults were completely mobile. I walked in there and they were happy. They were very happy with the care that they were getting by these very dedicated people. And then I was given the tour, obviously, by the owner of the 13 homes that was in the Coachella Valley that told us that they're very dedicated staff, and that this particular home operated at about $100,000 to $200,000 loss per year that was supplemented by thrift shops that they have in the Coachella Valley. A wonderful organization. I just want to make sure I'm not hurting a group home like this that takes care of people that 100% can't take care of themselves. And these kids and young adults have tremendous quality of life. They told me, in fact, I'm emailing one back and forth. Mr. Chairman, they actually have no use of their hands, and they email with the utilization of glasses that they have an optical mouse, and we've developed a friendship. So I just want to make sure, Mr. Chairman, we're not going to be hurting homes like this.
Senator Stone, I'm going to have a comment from Senator Mitchell in just a moment, but to answer your question, first we'd have to make certain that the facilities you're talking about is a skilled nursing facility. It could be under some other category. And any skilled nursing facility, and Mr. Darcy, you'll correct me, that does accept Medi-Cal patients will be eligible for the federal match and probably is not going to be in the losers column.
Yeah, that's generally right. Absolutely.
So again, another incentive, financial incentive for skilled nursing facilities specifically to accept Medi-Cal beneficiaries. Senator Mitchell.
That was my point of clarification, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Make sure that it was actually a SNP.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we do have a motion by Senator Roth. We've had public comment. Call the roll, please.
The motion is to pass. Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Nielsen?
Aye.
Nielsen, aye. Allen? Allen, aye. Anderson? Bell? Bell, aye. Block? Block, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Mitchell? Mitchell, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Morlock? Morlock, aye. Wynn? Wynn, no. Pan? Pan, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. Roth? Roth, aye. Stone? Stone, aye. Woke? Woke, aye. That's 14-1.
14-1, that bill is out. Colleagues, thank you for your help today. We'll see you on the floor at 2 o'clock. We'll take up our budget. Ms. Bosler, Mr. Dorsey, thank you. We are adjourned.
Non-